Hi, Class 3. Hope you're all keeping well and safe. I just want to say that this is my final history lesson with you all as a group. And I just want to say, just very quickly, that it's been an absolute privilege to teach you all. And you've been a unique group of individuals, and it's been an absolute pleasure to teach you all. And I'm going to miss you all very much. But today we're going to be looking at our history lessons, and we're looking at a continuation of the Trojan War. So just before we do that, I'd like you to pause the video and think about what we learned in the previous lesson. Yep, so well done. So we have been looking at the actual story itself of the Trojan War. I'm sure some of you have been thinking about the actual story that had taken place, where there was a disagreement between three goddesses. They came to Paris with a choice. Paris opted to go for Aphrodite's decision and decided to take Helen of Sparta back to Troy, which started off the entirety of the Trojan War. And as we're seeing in this picture here, we're seeing the Trojan horse, which secretly had hidden Greek soldiers in the horse, where they snuck out at night, opened the gates, and allowed Troy to be destroyed by the Greek army. So today we're going to be looking at the Trojan War. So fact or fiction. So today we're going to be putting on our historian hats, and we're going to actually be looking at whether we should believe if this was a real event that had taken place, or merely just a story that was just very exaggerated and very believable. So before we do that, again, we have to think about this as historians. So there's two key things I want you to take away from today's lesson. So we need to look at a primary source. So many historians will use this as well, such as myself. So a primary source is an object, a person's story, or a place that was during a particular time period. So an object could be a coin from a Minoan civilization with King Minos, what we believe was on that coin from our previous lessons. A person's story. So again, this could be a diary. I believe I've asked you all to write a letter as if you were a Minoan refugee. So again, that would have been a primary source if had one of existed. And a place that was during this time period. So the Parthenon, which was the temple dedicated to Athena in Athens. So a secondary source, this is something that has been written about a primary source. So it means that it's not been written during that time period that we were looking at, and it may not be reliable for information. So it's a bit like a textbook when we are looking at history. Sometimes it might not have the information that we're looking for, or it might not be reliable to read. So as historians, it's very important for us to look at history from both sides of the coin. So today we're going to be looking at how the Iliad has helped us learn about the Trojan War as historians. So remember, the Iliad was the book that was based upon the Trojan War, written by Homer, and we use this book as a primary source because this took place during the period of ancient Greece. And thanks to that book, we learn ways in which the ancient Greeks had fought for other lands for territory. We learn about the behaviors of the Greeks and what they valued, much like our own books today. We have also learned about several important people as well, like King Menelaus and King Agamemnon, who was the commander of the whole Greek army as well. So not only are we seeing how the Greeks had lived, but we're also seeing the power structure as well. So how Greece was ruled at this time. And of course, last but not least, the Iliad was one of the first pieces of literature in the world. So the books that might be on your desks or around you in your room may not have existed unless books like the Iliad had came out. So again, we do have to think about the other side of this as historians. So why should we doubt the reliability of the Iliad as historians? Well, the book itself described Greek gods taking part in the war. And of course, we know today that these gods do not exist. So that puts a bit of a shadow, a cast of doubt over the actual book's authenticity. So it means like the realism of the actual book. So how real it is to real life. The book was also written many years after the Trojan War. So the Trojan War was written about 1260 BCE, and the Iliad was only written 782 BCE. So several hundred years had passed before it actually was written. So this makes us doubt how real it would have been and how exaggerated the story had become after being passed down by generations. And of course, an important part of this book as well is that it's quite biased towards the Greeks, and it does not share the argument from the side of the Trojans. So again, if I use an example, as a United fan, a Manchester United fan, and I started to write about Liverpool and how bad they are, that would make me biased because I'm obviously a rival fan of Liverpool. And again, that is exactly the example we're thinking of with this book. It's biased towards the Greeks, and it doesn't share the argument from the side of the Trojans. So we only hear one side of the story. And as human beings, it's a very bad thing to do when we're only listening to one side of the story. So what do we know so far as historians? Well, we know that from the previous lesson, we were looking at the survivors of the Trojan War, such as the Trojan prince Aeneas, who had taken the surviving Trojans back to Italy to found Rome. And of course, the Romans went so far to present themselves as the descendants of the surviving Trojans themselves. Hinrich Schliemann, an archaeologist, had travelled to what is now modern-day Turkey in the late 19th century. So for those of you who aren't too sure about the year for that, then you're looking at the 1800s. So I'd like you to pause the video and tell me what you think an archaeologist is as well. Yeah, so well done. An archaeologist is someone who studies human history. So whether that be by a site in the bottom left picture here, or by finding an actual artifact itself and then trying to study it. So Schliemann was told of a possible location for the city of Troy itself, of ancient Troy, in the city of Hisarlik on the west coast of modern Turkey. So Schliemann had begun to dig, and he uncovered many ancient treasures, many of which are now on display at the British Museum. So do check out the website; you may be able to find them on there as well. And this discovery, of course, also led to a number of arrowheads being found in the archaeological layer of Hisarlik. So the archaeological layer is like the very old part of the city where you start to see very ancient ruins and different things from different time periods. And those arrowheads were found to have matched with the time of the Trojan War that had taken place. And it may even hint that a war did take place as well. So I'm sure many of you might have some questions how we, as historians, try to figure this out. Is that what we do is we will often look at weapons or artifacts and we will try to compare them. And over several decades of studying, we are able to place those items in different kind of years as well. So for those of you who aren't too sure how we figure that out, that's a brief explanation as to how we do that as historians. So, moving on. So, did the Trojan War actually happen? Well, the answer is maybe. We're not too sure. We are really unsure because we have quite very little evidence. And that's important because we believe the war may have taken place on what Schliemann had found. However, when we look at the Iliad, the story is greatly, quite dramatic with, gods and magic that takes place in the book. And we don't really know that, we know that those gods didn't exist, and those heroes that were in the books may not have, they may be made up to make the story more interesting for the reader. A bit like how we've been doing it with our own Greek heroes last week. So now I have a little task for you. So I want you are now historian in the year 4000. Imagine nothing remained of our cities and way of life except for the Harry Potter book. So the very first Harry Potter book, The Philosopher's Stone. So what do you think people would believe? So pause the video. I'd like you to have a few minutes just to think about that and think about how you could look at that as an historian, because we are doing the exact same thing as we are doing with the Iliad. Yeah, so well done. It's quite a tricky one, isn't it, really? So the Harry Potter book, there's things in the Harry Potter book that we can take away, such as muggles, who are people who don't have magical powers. We learn things about how Londoners lived, for instance, and how they got the tube. And then at the same time, we can cast doubts on things like magic and wands, because we don't believe that those things are real, because we can't do them with the experiments and the thinking that we have today. So in the year 4000, if the Harry Potter book was the only thing that had survived without a society, I'm sure they would do exactly the same thing as we're doing with the Iliad today. So for today's activity, I would like you to create a storyline of the Trojan War, so what we've learned from last week. I want you to make sure that you've used your Greek hero or Greek god that you did from last week, and make sure you draw them in this timeline, this storyline, sorry, for this activity. So there are two storyboards to choose from, so whichever you're most comfortable with doing. So I'm just going to show them on this video very quickly. So this is the first one. So what I've done is I've done the first two parts for you, and all I'd like you to do is try to fill in the rest of the story for me, and then also try to draw what has happened in each of those storyline parts. And if you can, try to put your Greek hero in the story. And then, of course, this is the second storyboard. So this is the one that I've done for you all. So if you're not too sure on how to do this yourself, this is here for you if you would like to use this one. And again, all I would like you to do for this one is to draw the actual storyline itself and try to include your Greek hero where you can. So I have put some little prompts in for you on number 4 and number 6. And I think number 7 would be great to do as well. But again, that's entirely up to you. Do enjoy the drawing with this one. And of course, just very quickly, just in case you were struggling for any ideas or struggling for ideas on how to draw this, I've put up an example for you in this video as well. So that's all from me, Class 3. So it's been an absolute pleasure to teach you all, wishing you all the best and a very happy and healthy future ahead of you. I'm sure I'll be reunited with you all in the near future, but I'll be thinking of you all very much. But for now, I'm really looking forward to seeing all the work on Shobi when you upload this for me. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing that. So take care, Class 3, and I'll speak to you guys hopefully in the near future. But if not, take care, and I'll miss you all very much.